Everyone in that Los Angeles courtroom heard in shock when the defense attorney mentioned allegations that Christian Combs targeted underage guests at so-called FreakOFFS. You could feel the room change. The tension was electric. Photographers snapped away as Christian pushed his chair back, his face drained, and simply walked out. Just like that. No little wave, no soft apology. He stormed right past his own legal team and vanished behind the exit doors. It was the kind of moment journalists live for, and it came down to one explosive revelation in that hearing: accusations involving minors at those wild yacht parties. Christian's sudden departure wasn't about him running away from court. It was about damage control. Because once that attorney floated the idea that children were brought to those performances, the story got darker than any of the previous press releases.
Yeah, I ain't hear about that raid. I only heard about the,
It was impossible to Phoenix.
Me and my dog.
Now it was
Me and my son right here. Firstborn.
Everyone wanted to be around.
His name is Bailey.
It exhausted him.
Look at him.
People just wouldn't leave
Who's
him
your daddy?
alone. Especially the girls. Christ.
You know.
Girls. It was embarrassing.
Sit.
Hard just to get him to call somebody. He like, it's too much work. Like, so happy birthday, Christian. Thank you everybody for coming and cheers.
So stuff.
27. 27.
It's Sunday.
It's Sunday.
We don't got no job.
We don't got no job.
And we don't got nothing to do.
And we ain't got nothing to do. Cause we have to do that together.
To back up the claim, his lawyer brandished transcripts from audio recordings. Those clips, recorded by a producer in a makeshift yacht studio, capture a young woman named Grace Omar K. rejecting advances that she says turned violent after tequila shots she believes were spiked. Grace was hired as a steward on a yacht Sean Diddy Combs chartered in late December 2022. She thought she'd be serving dinner and drinks on a family trip. Instead, she describes nonstop partying, a rotating cast of suspected sex workers, and cocktails that made people collapse after a single sip.
Now a son of embattled music mogul Sean Diddy Combs has been accused of sexual assault. A lawsuit filed in LA Superior Court on Thursday accuses Christian King Combs of sexually assaulting and possibly drugging a woman in December 2022. The woman says it happened while she was working on a yacht that Diddy had chartered. This comes just over a week after homes owned by Diddy were raided in LA and Miami as part of a federal human trafficking investigation. Neither the attorneys for Combs or Diddy have commented on the new legal complaint.
In a new lawsuit, Sean Diddy Combs' second son, Christian Combs, is accused of sexually assaulting a crew member working on a super yacht. That suit was filed here in Los Angeles. Attorneys representing former yacht stewardess Grace O'Markey say she was sexually assaulted on board a yacht when she was 25 years old in December of 2022 by Diddy's son, rapper Christian Combs. They say his dad, Sean Combs, leased the yacht and had full control of its staff and the premises. O'Markey's lawyers say Combs turned what was sold as a wholesome family excursion into a hedonistic environment. They stated, quote, defendant Sean Combs fostered and encouraged an environment of debauchery. There was always a party atmosphere filled with suspected sex workers, suspected laced alcohol, violence, and sheer disrespect of women and the yacht's crew. The lawsuit also contains photos of bruises that O'Markey's lawyers say she suffered when Christian Combs violently grabbed her and attempted to force her to perform a sex act. They also included a transcript of an audio recording which they say captures O'Markey being forced to consume suspected laced shots of tequila.
The carefree clip comes just days after a yacht steward filed a lawsuit against Christian, alleging he sexually assaulted her in December 2022.
The victim in the case has produced audio recordings that allegedly shows forcing himself upon her and that he wouldn't take no for an answer.
The woman says it all happened during what was supposed to be a wholesome family excursion with Christian and his father.
Check this out, y'all. This is Diddy. This is my son, King Combs. I've been watching my pops since I was a kid. And I'm proud of you, boy.
She says Diddy was the one chartering the yacht for the trip.
This lawsuit is bad for Diddy. He may be able to get out of it, but the optics are terrible when he's already facing a criminal investigation. This may be the nail in the coffin for him.
She says Christian came aboard heavily intoxicated, pushed her to take tequila shots, then groped her legs, chest, and worse. Even trying to force oral sex, she fought him off and scrambled away, only to have him track her down in the movie theater turned sleeping area, block the door, and attack again until someone finally intervened. Her complaint says the emotional fallout was brutal. Panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, an eating disorder, and even seizures followed. Photos of bruises on her arm and the audio files made it into the court filing when she sued both Combs men for sexual assault, harassment, emotional distress, and premises liability.
But focusing on Christian Combs, Omarky says that Christian Combs had been staying at a villa on the shore, but that he would come onto the yacht in the evening to party. And on December 28th,
been paid off by Sean Combs to keep quiet about what happened. And I will tell you what's really interesting about this complaint. Embedded in the complaint are photographs that purport to be Omarky's arms with bruises on them. And that is really interesting. You don't usually see that in a complaint like this. All right, so I want to bring on right now criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla, friend of the show. He's represented some very high-profile defendants in high-profile cases. Good to see you once again. So I don't think we've had a chance to talk about this lawsuit. And now that the news is reporting that Christian has been served with papers here, why is that significant?
Well, it's significant because anytime that they have the opportunity to continue to remind the public of the malfeasance of Diddy, of Diddy's son, of anything related to sexually inappropriate behavior, sexual assault, it helps. It helps the government continue to, lay out the narrative of how bad Diddy was, how bad Diddy's son was. So I think it's consistent with, what they've been doing, putting it out there and really destroying his character. I'm not saying that he didn't do anything to deserve it. I'm saying it's consistent with what they're doing, whether it's the government or the lawyers that are suing him civilly.
In court, Grace's attorney, Tyrone Blackburn, didn't waste time. He detailed the audio transcripts, telling jurors about cocktails spiked with GHB and other date rape drugs. He hinted that more recordings existed, tapes he'd fight to play. And then he said something no one expected, that the Combs siblings had a history of assisting in and taking part in these freak-offs with minors. Christian's lawyer, Aaron Dyer, later called Blackburn's suit lewd and meritless, promising a motion to dismiss what he labeled manufactured lies. But all these acts, Blackburn countered, are well documented.
To Miss Omarky, Jones taped this event with her. Yes, the lawsuit provides transcripts of audio recordings, and these audio recordings purportedly show, or you can hear, kissing sounds, her telling Combs not to touch her, her allegedly asking about whether she was drugged. Now, we haven't heard these tapes here on Law and Crime yet, but if they are what they purport to be, that is a huge piece of evidence. And remember, when we're talking a civil case, when we're talking lawsuits, the burden of proof is much lower than a criminal case. It's just preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not that this happened. So the civil suit accuses Christian of assault, battery, sexual assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They're a big part of this lawsuit. She goes into the mental anguish that she has gone through, the emotional harm that she has suffered as a result of that. That's important in order to prove.
In his lengthy lawsuit, Lil Rod straight name drops Justin Combs, describing him as someone who solicits prostitutes, underage girls, and sex workers. There's actually a picture of Justin Combs with an allegedly underage girl shown in the lawsuit. Now, in this specific instance, Lil Rod alleges at least one underage girl came to Diddy's home for a listening party. A sex worker was also apparently solicited, and a freak-off ensued. As an aside, this is the same night that Lil Rod alleges Diddy forced him to take a laced shot. He started to feel lightheaded and then woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, naked next to a sex worker. It's important to note Justin Combs is listed as a defendant on this case because, according to Lil Rod, he facilitated Diddy's alleged RICO enterprise and at times participated.
I think that if we're talking about additional charges and additional defendants, those are probably two of the more likely. And Christian, of course, was the subject of a civil lawsuit where there was a sexual assault allegation naming him directly. So I think if we're going to cast a bit of a wider net, people are talking about family members, other celebrities, maybe some employees like Christian Ofora, but I think the most likely would be those two sons.
Why do you think it's the most likely about those two? Just because of the recordings, the allegations against him? What are you thinking?
I think so. I think obviously they're just civil allegations, and those cases are going to be put on hold while the criminal case plays out. But, there is some smoke there. And obviously, there's a presumption of innocence and there's a lower standard in a civil case. But you have someone who's been named directly as someone who participated in a sexual assault. And everything else has been rumors and speculation. But here you at least have one verified complaint.
So what exactly were these freak-offs? Prosecutors say these weren't backyard barbecue parties. They were staged sex shows run by Diddy and backed up by his own kids. In the Manhattan indictment, freak-offs are described as meticulously planned performances where guests, even some underage, were forced into drug-fueled sexual acts while cameras rolled. The suit names both the Combs siblings as more than just bystanders. They allegedly helped recruit underage girls, handed out cash, loaded the locations with supplies, and even filmed the encounters alongside their father.
I believe it was Justin, Diddy, and G walked into the bathroom. Gunshots rang out. Little Rod woke up so scared. Justin and Diddy left. Little Rod went in the bathroom, saw G out all over the place, literally called the ambulance, carried him out. It was carnage and everything, put him in the ambulance. The police showed up. Little Rod cited that in his lawsuit, and then they asked for the LAPD's report. The LAPD just released an 18-page report with no mention of any carnage or anyone that actually got shot.
There's also allegations that he actually partook in these freak-offs and potentially drugged women. This is something Lil Rod is saying. How would the feds go about proving something like that? I know that's the pattern we've seen across a lot of these civil suits, that women allege Diddy, for instance, drugged them. But now Lil Rod's also pointing the finger at Justin Combs, saying he drugged some of these women. How would the feds then go to look further into that?
Yeah, Lil Rod's lawsuit is interesting in that there are many defendants. We talked about Christina Horam, right? Some of the allegations that came out in Lil Rod's lawsuit was Christina, of course, being Combs' right-hand woman. She allegedly had the fanny pack with the drugs that were provided to the sex workers. There are the allegations directly against Justin as well. So whenever you're proving something like this, obviously, you're going to rely on the testimony of witnesses. It could be an independent witness, because the sex workers, even though they're participants in a sex act, they won't necessarily be charged, or I don't think they're going to be defendants in the lawsuit, if the allegation is that they were forced to perform these sex acts and it wasn't just a commercial transaction.
Those charges paint a grim backdrop for Christian's case. On September 16th, 2024, a Manhattan grand jury indicted Diddy on racketeering, sex trafficking, and related counts. Prosecutors allege he manipulated women, some as young as 9, into freak-offs with paid male sex workers, used MDMA and other drugs to ensure compliance, and filmed everything. They say his empire spanned arson, bribery, and kidnapping charges, but all hinged on sex acts at these events.
I was at I believe to be one of P. Diddy's freak-offs.
Now, singer-songwriter Tania Wallace told TMZ's Harvey Levin for the Tubi special, The Downfall of Diddy, Inside the Freak-Offs. She believes she witnessed underage victims at one of Diddy's 2018 parties.
I'm looking like, are those midgets? Because it's people over them. Like, it's people trying to hide what they're doing.
Adults who are little people, or are you talking about minors?
Am I going to get in trouble? I don't want to say I witnessed any of that crazy stuff, but we all have common sense. Little people. That's not supposed to be there.
You're talking about underage people.
It's a shame.
Is this woman, Tania, is she really saying that there were minors involved in these freak-offs?
That is exactly what she's saying, Billy.
Yeah, the fact, Jake, that the government in this indictment presented evidence alleging that Sean Combs was running a criminal enterprise, and they actually named it in the indictment, the Combs Enterprise. And they said that this enterprise consisted of him as the alleged leader, his employees, assistants, staff, allegedly, that were able to procure women and alleged male sex workers to engage in performances for his own sexual gratification. Where it differs from a mob indictment, it has all the elements of putting together this racketeering allegation of all these moving pieces using resources from his businesses. But the fact that this is about an allegation of sexual gratification being accomplished by alleged human trafficking. It's one of the most unique indictments I've ever seen in this area, in the area of sex crimes.
First of all, he is not steering away from the idea of the freak-offs. They seem to be saying, these were called freak-offs, we're going to call them freak-offs, but they're not illegal.
Yeah.
But one of the charges he faces is transportation to engage in prostitution. If he's saying, yeah, I hired sex workers, but if he's transporting them and paying for them, I feel like it's going to be very, very difficult to argue he's not guilty of that charge. We talked last time about how he tried to get it dismissed from the case, basically saying it's a racist charge, but it's going in.
Yeah, so Diddy just walked into the courtroom like he normally does. He hugged all of his attorneys. He, dabbed up Mark Agnifilo. I think he was kind of searching in the gallery to see if he had family there, because when court had first started, nobody was there from his family. And I think he kind of looks forward, and I'm just speculating here, obviously I'm not in his mind, but I think he looks for people, especially his mom, to be inside that courtroom in the gallery. But today it was just Justin Combs all by himself. I think in the moment when he had first walked into the courtroom, it was a little bit after it had started, he kind of was like clearing his throat. I don't know if it was because he actually had to clear his throat or if it was to get his father's attention, just to let him know that he is here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but Diddy did turn around a couple of times. I don't know if it was to see if more of his family came in or to see, just to kind of like check in with Justin during that. But he seems to always kind of be more excited to see his family inside that courtroom.
In March 2025, Homeland Security agents raided Diddy's homes in Los Angeles, Miami, and New York. They seized electronics, guns, party records, and a mountain of lubricant. They detained Christian briefly for questioning, but didn't press charges. Christian was cuffed at his father's LA home during the Miami raid, but walked away free. Diddy's team called it an ambush and insisted both men would vigorously defend against meritless accusations. Still, the optics were brutal. A father under federal indictment, a son under a graphic civil suit.